Dead genres making a comeback, romantasy taking over the YA category, and publishers ruining middle grade debuts' chances before they even hit shelves? What is going on with traditional publishing? It's Lindsay and welcome back to my channel. Today I am doing my quarterly video where I share my 3 months worth of data about publishing and all of the deals that have been announced, and I take them and I make stats into them and I make graphs and I share basically all the trends that are happening in children's publishing right now with you so that you can keep up with what's happening in the industry, agents that are doing well, publishers that are selling in your genre, and maybe even help you come up with marketable, flashy ideas. At the very end, I do like to take some time to go over some of the deals that I am the most excited about because, if anything, I just like talking about books. Anyways, I'm really excited to share all my findings with you guys, so let's go ahead and dive in. But first, I need to let you know how these videos work for you guys who've never seen this before. So all of the stats that I collect in these videos are from Publishers Weekly. This is an online, completely free newsletter that you can get for yourself. I only ever cover middle grade and YA in these videos just because there is no free adult list to do this with. I will only be covering fiction. Non-fiction is a whole other beast that I just don't touch. If at any point you see one of my charts and you notice my math might be wrong, just don't tell me. Let me live in Delulu-land. Let me think I'm smart. I also like to say I don't police any identities. What I put in these stats is what authors are public and open about. If they are not public and open about their identities, I don't necessarily use their identities to make my stats. All right, I think that's all the housekeeping. Let's dive right in, shall we? So all of these stats were collected June through August of this year, and usually, but not always, most deals are announced 4 to 6 months after they are purchased, so we can kind of assume that these were made around January through May. There were a total of 116 deals this quarter, and if we look back, we can compare that to the number of deals for the previous quarters, and we can kind of start to see a little bit of a norm here with what to expect. Now let's talk about how many of the deals were middle grade versus YA. While middle grade numbers are still kind of down, this does look much better than the spring findings, so maybe that's a good sign. I'm hoping this isn't just a fluke and maybe middle grade will be, you know, evening out, being back to normal with the sales. If you haven't been noticing what's been going on with middle grade, while all the children's age categories have taken a dip, middle grade has been the steepest. So seeing it kind of rise back up is maybe a little hopeful. I'm hopeful anyways. Next, let's chat about the number of books sold per deal. This looks pretty normal. The majority of publishers are buying 1 book, some are buying 2, and very few are buying more than 2 at a time. And then we have the number of books bought at auction versus not at auction. Auction is when multiple publishing houses are bidding over the purchase of your book. It's usually a very rare situation, so the stats seem to track with what we always see. And this quarter, the books bought at auction, we had 2 middle grade and 5 YA. Next, I always like to track the books that are getting 6+ figure deals. We had quite a few of them this quarter. Here are a couple on screen. You can see now to pause if you want to read. Of the 6-figure deals, most were YA, 1 was middle grade, and as a special little treat, I always like to add in the agencies that are selling these 6-figure deals so you can add them to your list if you're going to start querying soon. A special note here, Azanti and Lit was absolutely on fire. I think they had 3 out of the 6 or 7 total deals, so yeah, definitely put them on your list. And then this is the summer 24 stats of the races of the authors who are getting the 6- and 7-figure deals. And just to clear up a little slight bit of confusion that I had last quarter when I made the switch, I decided to start using NASA or North African South Asian instead of Middle Eastern. It came to my attention that that's actually a colonizer term and a lot of folks don't really use that anymore. I know everyone's different and everyone has different preferences. However, I find this the most neutral and easy term to use. So going forward, this acronym will replace Middle Eastern. Just in my data, so you know. Now let's chat book format for middle grade. You see graphic novel is still hanging on with a really chunky, almost, you know, quarter percentage there. It seems to be steadily staying at like between a 15 to 25% mark. That's a really good sign for me. Graphic novels have boosted in sales. Like they're the only genre and category format in middle grade that is like actually expanding while everything else is declining. I think that's for many reasons. I think it's because of like decrease in attention span with children nowadays, you know, given all of the fun new technologies history things that they have to do. It's hard to compete with that with like, you know, just a prose book. Also, because of COVID, we did go through, and we are going through, a bit of a literacy crisis. Kids nowadays are just, their reading levels are so much lower than they were 10, 15, 20 years ago. And graphic novels are such a great, easy way to get kids reading. So, and then we can check out the YA formats. We did not have any anthologies or any books in prose any books in verse this quarter. They were all prose or graphic novels. Now let's chat release season. So for middle grade, these are when in the deals the books are projected to come out. I'll go ahead and pop up the YA one as well. I always like these stats because they kind of make a timeline for yourself. If you're on submission, you can kind of see like, okay, so if a book was bought, you know, now, when is a reasonable time for it to come out based on the stats of previous books announced. So now let's talk genre. I will show you the middle grade one first. You can take a moment if you'd like to pause and look that over, and then we will move right on into the YA. I don't have much to say about either of these. They look pretty normal given what we've seen the past year that I've been tracking, but they might kind of help you see where your current work in progress could fit in. Now, if you've been following this series every quarter, you'll know that I have been paying special attention to some of the YA subgenres that have been maybe like whispers that they might be coming back or is the next big thing. The ones that I've really been paying attention to are dark academia, post-apocalyptic or dystopian, and romantasy. I did not actually see any dark academias, or at least that word used, in the deals this quarter. I think maybe that's because there's so many. I'm wondering if that trend is starting to get saturated. We're still getting a chunk of romantasies. Again, I only count them if the word romantasy was used in the actual description of the deal announcement. However, there are a ton of YA romancy fantasy books that probably could fall into that category. And we had 5 books that actually use the term dystopian or post-apocalyptic in their announcements. I kind of wanted to take a moment and analyze like why dystopian is slightly having a comeback. I have a working hypothesis going, okay? And I don't know if it's right. I don't know if it's correct. I want your opinions on it. So I've been noticing that like every 15 or so years, we have a resurgence of what was popular and we want to bring it back. We're all very nostalgic. We all are craving that comfort and the safety with how like wild the world is, with like nostalgic, warm, comforting, childlike books that we loved so we can sink into it and like escape from the world. And so I just think every 15 years the new group of adults is like, oh, I want that again. Like vampires came back, right? And that was what, 2005, 2007-ish? After the paranormal hype kind of settled down a bit, we had like Hunger Games, Matched, Divergent, on all those spin-offs of dystopians. And if my hypothesis is correct, that means that in a few years after the dystopians have come out and they've had their moment, that means that the next wave is going to be what was poppin' after dystopian. And that means that ye old fantasy books and adventures and retellings will come back in style. I'm kind of excited for the epic fantasy resurgence. I just love a huge sprawling series. If I'm correct, I'm gonna be so happy. Check it in 10 years and then comment on this video. Let me know if I was right. Another reason I think it's making a comeback is a lot of popular dystopian authors are like reigniting their series. A lot of faves coming back and playing around in their world. And there's been quite a few other types of media that have had really successful post-apocalyptic, you know, things come out that people are excited for or that are coming out soon. Now let's switch over and talk about the other subgenre, which was romantasy. Obviously you can't talk about romantasy without mentioning TikTok. Like that is why it's there. That's why we have the term. I actually found this amazing video the other day on a Book Leo's booktube channel where she talks about what is romantasy, how it came up, the history of it, and so forth. It's a really, really well done video and I highly recommend it, so I will link it down below. There was also this really great article I found by fellow author JL who wrote about how Bridgerton has positively impacted YA romantasy and the sales within it. It of course was very helpful that the 3rd season of Bridgerton did come out while these books were being snapped up. So interesting correlations there. In her article as well, JL points out some really good POC romantasies that need a little bit more love and attention. So if you want to check that out, that will be linked below as well. Now let's chat debut versus return authors out of all of the deals announced. We have YA here, and this looks pretty normal, but middle grade is where it gets interesting. So over the past year, we've seen a steady decline in middle grade debut sales, and then there was just like a huge jump. I'm absolutely flummoxed. I don't know why. I would like to think, hey, middle grade's getting healthy again, but it might just be a fluke. I have no idea. We'll have to keep tracking it to know for sure. But yeah, the middle grade area has been very rough for a bit. Like I mentioned, all children's age categories are down, but middle grade has been hit the hardest with like a 16% decrease over everybody else's like 7 or 8% decrease. One thing I found absolutely fascinating, but like totally makes sense, is that most of middle grade sales are from big seller series. We're talking like J.K. Rowling and Dave Pilkey, the Dogman stuff, Rick Riordan, Goosebumps, things like that. That makes up 69% of all middle grade books sold. Like that's like 4 authors selling 70% of middle grade. You know what I mean? Like that is just wild. Like no wonder they're not buying debuts. They don't need to. And on top of that, kids aren't reading as much as they were 10 years ago, and kids don't know how to read as well as they did 10 years ago. Not to mention book banning is like running rampant right now in the US. If you've been watching the news at all or following, it's just like absolutely wild. And schools and libraries is mainly where middle grade readers get their books. They don't go to TikTok, they don't go to Barnes and Noble, they don't go to Goodreads. They go to their librarian, they go to their teacher, they go to their friends to get book recommendations. So given that, like by publishers picking up debut middle grade novelists, like are we doomed from the start? Like is there even a point? Like do they even need us? That sounds very doom and gloomy, but I mean, given the stats, it's like a legitimate question. I think given all the things working against debut middle grade novelists, the best thing that the publishers can do for them is to go paperback first. I mean, it's cheaper for the kids to get their hands on. It's cheaper for schools and libraries to get a hold of. David Gaunt, or whatever the guy's name is who runs Barnes & Noble, might actually put your books in Barnes & Noble because he doesn't want to buy hardcovers anymore because they always return the hardcovers because they can't sell the hardcovers. They're just too expensive. Anyway, all the depression aside, now let's switch over to author identities. First, we're going to talk about gender. We have both middle grade here and YA. Both look pretty normal for what we see. Then moving on to author sexuality, we have middle grade here and we have YA. And then let's take a look at race. Here we have YA and here we have middle grade. Middle grade is down quite a bit actually. I'm hoping that was just a fluke. Sometimes these things happen in the stats. We'll see as we get more months ahead of us to keep track of that, but like yikes. And here will be a breakdown for all of the races within the POC umbrella. And then for disability, I did go ahead anyway and combined middle grade and YA because the percents on both are always under 4%. So combining them really didn't make that big of a difference here. And then you guys know me, I'm always on the look for something just like weird to throw into these videos that I noticed that was really fun. First of all, I noticed that the Wednesday Addams or the Addams Family comp was just like on fire this quarter. I don't know if that was like necessarily a good thing or a bad thing. Like, does it mean it's like selling really good if you pop that in there, or does it mean that people are gonna get tired of seeing that? I don't know. To me, when I see an Addams Family comp, I get super pumped because the Addams Family Values 1993 is my favorite movie of all time. But I do worry with how often it's being used that it's going to become like a kind of like when people like comp the Hunger Games. It's like, oh, okay, sure. I mean, at some point it gets so saturated that that comp means nothing to people. So I'm like, ah. Another fun thing I noticed was that there is a big decrease in the use of comparison titles in these announcements. In fact, in the 116 announcements, only 23 used comparison titles. Comparison titles are like the Addams Family, when you compare your book to other media that's already out there to kind of give people a feel for what to expect. Those used to be like a really hot thing. And I guess they're not anymore because yeah, only 20% really of people are using them. It makes me wonder if they're as important in query letters anymore. Used to in the day, I mean, people always said you don't have to have comp titles, but they are very helpful. And I don't have any data to support this, but it just seems to me that a year ago, there were way more comp titles in use than there are now. Maybe this will be good for some of you guys who are stressing about finding comparison titles for your books. I know I was when I was querying. If they're not being used as much, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe you don't have to stress. Now let's talk some publishing deals that I am so excited for. These immediately went straight on my TBR. Okay, first we have Jordan Gray's debut Bitten, which is a YA paranormal romantasy pitched as Crescent City meets Fourth Wing, in which a teenage girl is thrust into a treacherous, seductive world of werewolves after witnessing the murder of her best friend and experiencing her own transformation into the beast that killed her. She must contend with forbidden love, knife-sharp royals, and deadly politics if she wishes to survive and, more importantly, avenge her friend's death. I think the thing that intrigues me the most about this is that it's like werewolf politics, werewolf hierarchy. Like that's what kind of drew me in the most. I'm not the biggest like romantasy reader, so I'm like tentative about this one, but I'm so excited for like a wolf politics book that I added it anyway. I am, however, going to say something controversial yet brave. With the comps of Crescent City and Fourth Wing both being adult and the word seductive being in the title, I'm just kind of wondering why this wasn't adult and why it was YA instead. Statement aside, this sounds really interesting and I'm excited to see what it brings to the table. Next we have Victoria Dare and the Blood of Kings, a historical YA fantasy pitched as Indiana Jones meets the Diviners. In 1939, with the world on the brink of war, 16-year-old Victoria Dare accompanies her father on an excavation to uncover a lost Egyptian tomb where she is drawn into a plot involving Nazi occultists, Bolshevik assassins, and a mysterious figure her psychic friend calls the Shrouded Man. This is full of so many Lindsay buzzwords. Occultists, Egyptian tomb, like 7-year-old Lindsay losing her shit right now. The Diviners comp. I love Libba Bray. Yeah, can't wait for this one. Another historical fantasy I'm really pumped for is Blood and Breath, a YA 1920s fantasy with elements of horror in which a black girl makes a deal with the devil to infiltrate and destroy the ruling magical class that oppresses and nearly killed her. All she wants is revenge, but she soon discovers she's got far worse than what she's bargained for. I love a good historical fantasy. They're just everything. You can thank Libba Bray for starting that with the Gemma Doyle series, am I right? Great and Terrible Beauty stands from 2007, rise up. Okay, this one was so unique, I just had to add it. So it is a YA dark fantasy adventure called Vampires of Valhalla. On the eve of winter solstice, the village of Hardholm is raided by Viking vampire longships, and when 16-year-old Alice's twin sister is chosen as a sacrifice, she will do anything to save her from an unimaginable fate, even if it means wrestling with her own new vampire existence. Vikings and vampires together? So cool. I had to put this one on the list because it just sounds so good in every other way. This is about a dragon conservationist who must put rivalries and class divisions aside and partner with a dragon racer to save the last known gold-plated dragon from corrupt powers that would exploit it for its priceless scales. Are you kidding me? That sounds so good. Anything with dragons just instantly wins me over. Speaking of dragons, the next book we have is a debut middle grade fantasy series called A Sky Full of Dragons. It follows a young witch named Spella whose magical hat-making aunt is kidnapped before Spella's first day at Dragon's Knob, a school for wand witchery and magic. I mean, say less. Oh yeah, this one was super cool too. So this is a YA fantasy. The beast becomes her. This is Wednesday meets Stalking Jack the Ripper with a Norse myth spin. It follows Edith, who was sent to Skelegrim Academy to be among the berserkers like herself. We already have like a D&D barbarian class here for it. But when a student is attacked and a handsome huntsman suspects Edith is behind it, Edith must set out to prove her innocence and avoid the hunter's crosshairs or become the killer's next victim. That sounds so good. And those are the summer 2024 stats for middle grade and YA publishing. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please give a like and consider subscribing. It's really fun and zany over here. And it's Halloween season. Please consider checking out the odds and the Glass Witch, which this book takes place on Halloween night, and the odds takes place in a haunted nursing home. I literally couldn't have wrote more Halloween coded books for you guys to read. Purchase links are always down below. I mean, like, you know, if you wanted to check them out. But thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!